Welcome to our event today, and thank you so much for coming. I'm Victoria Compton from the EDC. We're a small nonprofit organization with a mission to make the lives of businesses and workers a little easier, a little better. In particular, we've concentrated over the last few years in the creation of family wage jobs. And one of the ways that we do that is through trades training. Mickey, our trades training coordinator, Mickey Von Dasso, put this together. And thanks, Mickey, for doing that. I'm excited to see everybody here. We are recording it for the folks who couldn't make it, and so that we can put the recording up on our website and share it with the schools. If you don't want to be a participant in that, just go ahead and turn off your video and maybe send a chat and don't talk. But otherwise, this meeting is recorded. And we've got some amazing guests today. Mickey's going to introduce all of them. So Mickey, I will hand the baton or microphone over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Victoria. We have joining us from Washington State Ferries, we have Seth Hamlin, who's the port captain for our region, and Renee Mason, who's one of the WSF recruiters. Then from Puget Sound Pilots, we've got Travis McGrath. Nick Jones will be joining us from ABC Seafoods and Jones Family Farm. And Tom Averna will be joining us from Orcas Island Marine Surveyors and formerly from Deer Harbor Charters. So talking about a few different areas of maritime work in this county and the surrounding area. Also, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to say, but first we've got mini kids coming.
Yep.
And you might have been about to say that. Thanks, Mickey. Yep.
Yeah, so that's fine, just fine. So without further ado, Minnie Kinch from Workforce Northwest wanted to say a little bit. So Minnie, did you want to?
Yes, I just wanted to let any of your job seekers know, and your employers, that we do serve both employers and employees, and that if they are interested in pursuing a career, it can be any career in the trades or related occupations, we do offer some free training services. And I hope that everyone will consider contacting the Career Center if you need additional training or assistance in preparing your resume or anything to get a job.
Mickey, thank you for, Renee, thank you for coming today. What is a good number for folks to call you? Because you do offer some amazing programs.
360-378-4662.
Fantastic.
We offer on-the-job training programs that give an employer reimbursement of part of your salary for a training period up to 6 months. We offer additional training if you need to take training at the colleges for up to a 2-year degree program where you get certified in a trade, and other incentives. So check it out whether you're eligible for those incentives or not. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Minnie, for coming.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I just posted in chat a flyer from that Minnie sent out to share. One other thing that I wanted to mention is that some of the jobs, for example, at WSF and other larger boats require a merchant mariner credential, and the EDC has a program, thanks to a number of generous private donors, to support the people getting that merchant mariner credential. You may have seen that on the web page advertising this event. But attendees at this career fair will be invited to apply for that program, and it provides support for the direct costs of applying for the merchant mariner credential. And most of those costs are the same as for the OUPV or 50-ton. So if you're thinking about doing something that using those that would support the San Juan County transportation and economy, then you'd be eligible for that as well. So without further ado, I guess, Seth, are you and Renee ready to present now?
I am here. There's Seth. How are you, Seth?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. So yeah, I'm ready to present. If you're ready, I will share my screen here.
Okay, I didn't get a chance to make you co-host since I didn't see you came on. So let me just do that quickly so you can share your screen.
Okay.
Thank you both for coming. This is Seth Hamlin and Renee Mason from WSF. So, and you should be able to share now.
Okay, so let's click on that and okay, I'm not sure. Can you see my screen? Okay, so just a little bit about Washington State Ferries. We are part of the Washington State Department of Transportation, and we operate and maintain. So we're a bigger part of not just ferries, but we're a bigger part of the transportation system throughout the state of Washington. So not only do we run the one of the largest ferry systems in the nation with approximately 24 million passengers a year, we also own and operate 18,600 lane miles of state highway. We also maintain over 3,300 bridge structures, and not to mention, we partner with 31 public transportations systems and provide over more than 220 million passenger trips a year. We own three trains in the Amtrak Cascade fleet, and we manage the world's largest tunneling projects and the world's longest floating project bridge. So not only are we one of the largest ferry system in the nation, we also provide transportation throughout the state of Washington. So working for WashDOT, give you a little information about working for us. We have excellent benefits. You have career growth, personal development, and a work-life balance. So a lot of different entities within the Mariner systems, you get to go home every night. That's one of a big plus to a lot of our potential employees, is that you get that work-life balance. Washington State Ferries has 22 vessels, 15 terminals, and 11 routes. Again, we approximately 25 million per year that we transport passengers. So the minimum qualifications to work for the ferries is that you would need to have a high school diploma or equivalent. You would need to have a valid transportation workers identification card. You would also need to have a valid unrestricted driver's license. Then our deck positions, you would also need to have a valid merchant mariner credential with a minimum of an OS or ordinary seaman credential, or an AB, an able-bodied seaman endorsement on your credentials. And with that, you also need the valid U.S. Coast Guard medical certificate. And like Mickey was saying earlier, that they do have a program that will help you get those credentials. So that is really awesome. Additional requirements for these positions, the federal requirement mandates that you're able to read and understand and follow directions in English. So you will have to demonstrate that you're able to read and understand English during the interview process. You also will be required to respond to shipboard emergencies. Deckhands must be clean shaven at all times and a neatly groomed mustache, because you do have to be able to wear a self-contained breathing apparatus. So that is that is a requirement of the job. Deckhands also must possess normal color perception, and it must be documented on your merchant mariner credential. So the on-call deckhand duties is like I said, the OS, or the ordinary seaman, is an entry-level position, and it maintains the cleanliness of the vessels, including the restrooms, and to ensure the safety and security of the passengers. Now, an able-bodied seaman is also assists with the loading and unloading of passengers, and you will may be asked to stand watch at the wheelhouse, and you will be responsible to respond to shipboard emergencies. Our work schedules for our on-call deckhand positions, it varies. We do ask that you require a 15 minutes response time to the dispatcher. So you call back, not respond to the vessels, but we do have you respond to the dispatch within a 15-minute response time. You're only able to refuse work 2 refusals per week, which is a 2-week cycle per cycle. And if a dispatch is unable to fill a shift, the lease on-call seaman must take it. So you have a right to refuse if you if the lease seeing your person. And how our positions are, it is all seniority based. So we are covered by the local IBU in Boatlands Union. And we do it seniority wise. Seniority is determined by your date of hire and your bargaining sequence number. And you will be expected to work your way up through the system to gain your seniority, and people with the lower seniority, you be prepared to work. And you may be, because it is a seniority based system, you should be prepared to work under employees that have less experience but more tenure with WSF. So if you come on with a little bit more experience, you will have to work under people who has less experience than you, but has more time with WSF. It usually takes a couple years before you have the seniority to bid on a permanent position, and it often depends on your willingness to accept shifts and assignments. So even with the AB endorsement on your credentials, there may be times that you will work as an OS on different occurrences, and you will be paid at the OS rate. So punctuality is a huge part of the Washington State Ferries. Punctuality is critical. Washington State Ferries provides service vital to the infrastructure of the Puget Sound. And if we miss a sailing due to a late employee, entire communities and economics can be impacted. You will be let go if you are late to training. And yes, so in plan ahead, make sure that you have enough time to arrive safely to work, and that your transportation is on point. So do you have any questions for us? No questions.
So I've heard a few questions that I can throw out there
Okay.
from people who've inquired about other programs. So one of those, and you may have addressed this a little bit, but just want to make sure it was addressed, was about how people can, and this could be for you or for Seth, about how people can work at WSF if they're living on the islands, because I know a number of people were concerned about the possibility of having to go to other ferry systems if they're living out here in the island.
I can answer that one. I live out here. I started out here on the terminal 27 years ago or so. We have people that live on Orcas and Shaw and Lopez, and we can work the schedule where if you do live on those islands, it'll probably be the one time in your career that you don't get to spend the night at home, but you get to spend the night in Friday Harbor due to our shifts, but it's absolutely totally workable. The other thing is that there are now limits. Unlike when I got hired, we had to go anywhere in the system whenever we were called. There are now limits. You don't have to work anywhere outside of 35 miles from your home. So you will not be required to work anywhere but Anacortes in the inner island boat. And there's plenty of work up here to stay busy in Anacortes and on the inner island boat. If you want to work your way up through the career, go to your AB, get your licenses, become a maiden and a master. It behooves you to go travel and work a lot of different places, but it's not required. But if you live on the islands, it's absolutely possible.
Another question that somebody had asked us about was whether there was support for going to that mandatory training at the beginning, because they said it was held in Seattle, and so they would need to have a hotel there. So
historically, there has not been. I think this year they are actually planning on offering it to people from up here. So that is a new change. There's some new directives coming out from the governor's office to try and make it easier to get a job here. So one of those is that I believe they are going to start, and I can't tell you 100% sure that it's happened yet because yesterday was the first day of the first class, and I'm not sure if they are helping that person. But yes, it is in the workings, and it will be happening. There's also, along with what Mickey and his group are doing, there are going to be ways to get financial help from Washington State Ferries to get the licensing, to get your credentials and TWIC cards and everything like that are shortly coming down the pike as well. So that's all something that's never happened before. Minnie, I see. Minnie, is your hand up?
Yes, it is. I had a question. I think some of the community colleges may offer deckhand or ordinary seaman credentials or training. Am I right in that? And do you know which ones?
I am not sure about that. I know that I mean, I can help. You guys can always contact me, but I know that the school in Anacortes, can't think of what it's called off the top of my head right now, but they were offering some help in that aspect too. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's the Marine Trade Center, and I believe it's through Skagit Valley College.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
there are a couple of questions in chat as well. Minnie, were you done with your question?
Yes, I will check into that because we do cover tuition expenses for trades that are hot jobs. And this is certainly one where we need some more people to apply for these jobs.
I see that Mary asked if you get benefits right away. You do. You start your medical and retirement and everything else right away. So that's nice.
And somebody else asked what the starting wage was for the ordinary seaman.
I don't have it right off the top of my head. I think it's $20.43. Renee, do you have that in front of you?
I don't have it right in front of me, but I believe that that's what it is. Yeah. I can stop sharing my screen and I can check it real quick here.
And I did share those 4 flyers that Renee had passed out. Victoria, do you remember some of the other questions that we'd gotten from people regarding working at WSF from, well, living in the islands?
That was really the biggest one, whether or not people could continue to live here and work for Ferries. So it sounds like that got pretty well answered, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
One other thing that we do offer is we offer, once you are an employee, time off that can be reimbursed, and all fees for schools and licensing and upgrading your license. You know, from OS to AB to mate to master, we cover that all. There's no cost to you at all. We'll reimburse you for your time off and everything. So that's you know, we want people to move up the ladder and you know, improve their lives.
That's really wonderful. Another thing that people don't tend to think about when the job market is tight and there's a lot of positions open for very few applicants is things change, and they can change on the turn of a dime. And a great place to be is someplace like Washington State Ferries or the Puget Sound Pilots, because those jobs don't evaporate typically when the economy declines. There might be some loss, but it's a very steady job that you don't have to worry about, which is awesome for families or people with mortgages, people with commitments.
The only, I believe, entity in the state and probably almost in the country due to attrition, because we are essential workers, that hired through COVID,
Right.
as opposed to laying people off.
Right, exactly.
We didn't hire very many because we weren't allowed to, but because of COVID restrictions or whatnot. So we obviously, that's why we don't have enough now, but we were actually hiring through that as opposed to laying people off.
That's great. Any other questions for Ferries?
there was a couple of other questions one other question that showed up in the chat, and a comment about places where people could get marine training too. So one person asked what the wage is for a maid if you move up the ladder.
Renee, do you have that?
I'm pulling it up right now, so give me just a second here.
Well, while she's doing that, somebody else commented that colleges that offer marine-related technology programs include Skagit Valley College, Seattle Central College, Olympic College, and Bates Technical College. And that was through WOIS. And there's some local places that offer training, which may or may not be eligible for WIOA funds through Workforce Northwest.
Well, thanks to Mary Powers for looking that up for us. Thanks, Mary.
You're welcome.
Well, she's looking at that up. What would you say, Seth, is the sort of the best thing about working at WSF? And I guess to balance that out, what's the thing that you find most people find most frustrating?
Start with the hard thing first.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll start with the most frustrating. The most frustrating thing is, and you know, has historically been being on call, especially out here in the islands. They'll call you up and say, hey, by the way, you know, can you be in Anacortes tomorrow morning to work a 10-hour shift? So, from, you know, coming from Friday Harbor, it's an hour plus to get there, or any of the islands, an hour plus to get there. You know, you work your 10 hours, it's an hour plus 2, 3, depending on the island you are to get back. So they're long days. So that's kind of the hardest part. The best part is, you know, especially if you want to work your way up into the pilot house, it's the best office view of anywhere in the world. I worked down in Seattle for a while, and you know, in the evenings, leaving Seattle, I sit up in the pilot house and I just watch the sunset on this beautiful city that actually turns green in the evenings, as the Emerald City. And you know, it's either that or you have, you know, Mount Baker and all the islands out here in the background, and you know, you just sit out, and that's your office window. It's incredible, you know, and as well as the job security. It's a great place to work. And I started out here in Friday Harbor, like I said, 27 years ago, working on the terminal, and now I'm the port captain, so it can be done.
So I do have, so the starting wage for an OS is $23.01. The starting wage for a mate is $44.62. So those are the starting wages.
It's not just the $21 or whatever. It's also the value of health insurance, retirement. You guys are in PERS, I think, right? Which is a pretty nice retirement program, which, you know, sometimes it's hard to think about early on in a career, but by the end of it, when you don't have to worry about eating cat food, that's a good investment.
Exactly. That's one of the biggest things that I tell people is you have to stop and think about the benefits that we have to offer. We not only do we offer your wage, your standard wage, but we also have the pension plan, which is the PERS. And you get paid sick leave and vacation leave also for working for us. And you get holiday pay too for different holidays. So those benefits you have to add into that starting wage that a lot of people don't take into consideration. So yeah, it is huge.
Plus those cute outfits. I'm sure everybody gets a Ferries outfit too, right? Like uniforms.
Oh yeah, lots of uniforms. Cute, I don't know, but yes, uniforms. So don't worry about ruining your own clothes.
Exactly.
So somebody else asked, so what the starting wage for mechanics is, and I've heard that mechanics in other areas of maritime are also in really high demand. So probably.
Oh yeah, engine room personnel are in extremely high demand. Again, I don't have that information right with me. If I had to do it all over again, I probably would have gone to the engine room, but I worked too hard to get where I am now. But they work 12-hour days for a week, and then they have a week off. So basically they work a week on and then a week off, a week on, a week off. So we have engine room personnel that live all over the country, and they actually just fly in sometimes, work their week, and then they go home for a week. So
yeah, our starting wage for our engine rooms is $28.49 an hour.
Is that for the wiper, or is that for the somebody more advanced?
That's for someone with an Oilers endorsement. Up until now, they've been very reluctant to hire wipers. I think we have one right now, but this whole alternative service plan, this whole shortage of crew, we've actually been pushing very hard. That operations, my department, has been pushing the engine room very hard to start hiring wipers, and I think it's going to happen. So that means you don't need anything special other than your MMC and your TWIC card. No other experience.
Fantastic.
Are there any other questions for Seth or Renee before we move on? Well, Minnie mentions that Skagit Valley College offers the marine mechanics certification. Well, thank you so much, Seth and Renee, for coming and talking about working at WSF. If there are any other questions, we can put them in chat. We can also refer questions to them after this event. So thank you both for coming and speaking with us.
I'm just going to interject that I have to go at 1 o'clock if this isn't over. But if people want my email address, Mickey, you've got it. You're more than welcome to send that out to them if I'm not here.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. If you want, you could put that in the chat too.
Sure, I'll do that. Absolutely.
So with that, I want to introduce Travis McGrath. Thank you so much for coming to talk about Puget Sound pilots and the other areas of the maritime industries. Thank you.
Thanks, Mickey. Good afternoon. I'll share my screen here. Is everybody seeing that? You do see that?
Yes.
A pretty picture. Great. So my name is Travis McGrath. I live in Anacortes. I'm a Puget Sound pilot, and I know that this maritime career fair is focused on employers in Skagit County. We are not an employer in Skagit County, but the reason I'm here is to introduce you to ship piloting as a long-term goal on a maritime career path. Stand by, just trying to get to the next slide here. So I began working on tugboats in Alaska right out of high school, out of Anacortes High School. Eventually became a tugboat captain, and for about 15 years worked all over the West Coast. I took the state exam to become a pilot in 2016, and pilots are highly skilled, especially trained captains. We board oil tankers, cargo vessels, cruise ships. We guide them safely through Washington state waters. The ship captains, like the one you see here on the bridge wing of a container ship with me, travel to ports all over the world. They can't be expected to possess an intimate knowledge of the local conditions of the port, the shoals, the weather, the traffic, the currents. So every port the ship goes to, a local pilot will board and take over navigation of the ship. And the really important distinction between the pilot and the captain is that I'm not a member of the crew, and I'm not subject to the commercial pressure that the captain is under. For example, if the ship is behind schedule, the captain may want to run at an unsafe speed, but I don't care about the ship's schedule. I care about keeping Washington state waters safe. So the state requires ships to carry licensed pilots. The ships pay the pilotage rates as determined by the state, but we don't work for the ship. We work for you. So your tax dollars don't support our wage, but we still work for you. And we do that to ensure against the loss of lives, damage to property and vessels, and to protect the marine environment. This is part of the Puget Sound Pilotage District, the northern part. The district starts at Port Angeles, goes east, north to the Canadian border, and south to Olympia. So it's one of the largest pilotage districts in the world, the area that we're responsible for. That's one of our pilot boats. When a ship is inbound in the Strait of Juan approaching Port Angeles, I'll call the captain of the ship on the radio, direct him to slow down to 10 knots and give him a safe course to steer. That'll provide a lee from weather for the pilot boat to come alongside and for me to climb up the ladder looking something like that. I've got a quick video of this is a pilot boarding a vehicle carrier. This will be one of our longer climbs, and skip ahead a little bit. You'll notice once he's on the ladder, that pilot boat pulls away. That's so if the ladder breaks or for some reason the pilot falls, I'd rather be falling in the water rather than onto the deck of the pilot boat and suffering an injury from that. We have a very good man overboard retrieval system that we drill on regularly, but it's still a very hazardous climb. 2 pilots last year, both in New York, died doing this. A few years ago, 4 pilots on the Columbia River Bar died, either boarding or disembarking ships. And we put a lot of faith in the seamanship of the sailor that rigged that ladder as we're going up. It's literally a leap of faith. Once I get to the bridge, I'll take the con, I'll take the navigational conduct of the ship. The captain maintains command of the ship, but the pilot is in charge of the navigation. I don't actually have my hands on the wheel, but I give rudder commands to the helmsman, throttle commands to the quartermaster, and orders to the tugs while we're docking. And that's kind of what it looks like piloting ships during a pandemic that we're thankfully coming out of. It's a tanker in the straits. And the most challenging jobs we do are big ships in narrow waterways. These waterways haven't gotten any bigger, but the ships have gotten much bigger. And it might look like there's a lot of room in that picture, but this is what it looks like from the bridge entering a waterway, where you really start to lose visibility of the water on both sides of the ship. That's the largest ship to ever call Puget Sound, CMA CGM Ben Franklin. It was 1,300 feet long. And that's what a ship like that would look like in comparison to the Space Needle. That Ben Franklin could carry 18,000 containers. So another is a time-lapse video here of a ship backing into the Duwamish River. By far our most challenging assignment while we're going backwards, making turns, going through bridges with about 20 feet of clearance on each side, about 1 meter of underkeel clearance between the bottom of the ship and the bottom. Since this is a San Juan Islands focus group, they're well before my time, but some of you may be aware of the pilot who hit the old West Seattle Bridge in the 70s. He lived on Lopez Island. He was forced to retire. His wife said that he took the ferry to Anacortes one night and was never seen from again. She was later convicted of his murder, and the rumor was that she may have ground him into sausage and fed him to the neighbors. But anyway, the joke amongst the trainees while we were learning how to do this difficult assignment was, whatever you do, don't hit the bridge because your wife could literally kill you. And that's just about approaching the Spokane Street Swing Bridge, which is right there. And the West Seattle Bridge is the tall one that's currently out of commission, not because it was hit by a ship, thankfully. We also pilot foreign flagged yachts over 1,300 gross tons. They're required to take pilots. They're mostly going into Lake Union and Lake Washington. They're gearing up for cruising in Alaska in the summertime. And cruise ships. So they keep us extremely busy in the summertime. We're really looking forward to the full return of cruise because it makes up a very significant portion of our revenue. These are some pictures of small boats doing stupid things, cutting in front of big ships that we really don't appreciate. And that shows the invisible distance in front of a ship, where if your boat is in there, I can't see you, and that's a problem for everybody. About every 4 years, when there's vacancies, the State Board of Pilotage Commissioners holds an exam. Applicants must hold a 1,600-ton master's license and have 2 years of command time as a captain, which that typically takes 3 or 4 years to get that many days on the vessel as a captain. Pilots come from tugs, like my background. Also, Washington State ferry captains make up a large number of our pilots, deep draft ships, and the Navy. For that exam, it's a 6-hour written test. Those who pass that test, they move on to a simulator exam at PMI, Pacific Maritime Institute in Seattle. And that's a 45-minute transit. That's like the worst day you could imagine on the water. And applicants are evaluated on their real-time ship handling, their decision-making, and to see how they manage the vessel when everything that can go wrong does go wrong. That would be for the state license. For the federal license, pilot applicants would have to draw every chart of Puget Sound from memory, and state ferry captains and mates also have to do this for the areas of their ferry route. So the Coast Guard would give me a chart that looks like this with just the outline of the land, and I would have a couple hours to fill in every navigational aid, every depth, shoal areas, the traffic lanes, geographic points of land, the magnetic compass variation. So it's a lot, 25 charts that cover the whole area that we've all drawn from memory. It was quite a task. That's my friend Sandy Bendixson, the first female Puget Sound pilot. And that's the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
We've got we've got a couple questions in the chat box. Vicky, do you want to hit it, or shall I just keep talking? I'll just keep talking. Mary Powers asks, if a person was a ship's pilot for several years but was not able to physically do the career anymore due to aging or injury, what are some examples of careers they could transition into that would have less physical aspects but still use their pilot skills and knowledge?
That's a very good question. It's unusual for a pilot to either choose or be medically removed from piloting, although there is a mandatory retirement at age 70. And here in Washington State, that was put in place after that pilot hit the West Seattle Bridge, and he was well into his 70s. There have been a number of pilots in the past few years. In fact, there was one who lived here in Anacortes in his 50s who decided to retire because of all of the night work he felt was potentially shortening his lifespan. But in terms of other careers to transition to, yeah, that's a great question. We view this as the pinnacle. So I would have a hard time finding something else to do because I love it so much. But there's a number of office management jobs for shipping companies, tugboat companies, perhaps the ferries that someone could step down to take an office job.
That's a great question. And actually, you're right. I mean, that's, from what I understand, it really is the pinnacle. It's the pinnacle financially. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what your full-on pilot earns. Yeah.
So we're not employees. We're partners in the Puget Sound Pilots. So there's 50 of us. I own 1/50th of the company. We pool our revenue. We pay off expenses at the end of the month, and we equally distribute what's left over, the net revenue. And the State Utilities and Transportation Commission, they set our rates. So they set rates for your water, your sewer, your gas, and your pilotage service. So I don't want to get too much into our rates right now because we're in the middle of negotiating those rates. But nationwide, average pilot salary is about $500,000 a year.
Pretty good. And then Mickey, I see you got your hand up. And do you want to talk about V. Mitchell's question too in the chat?
Well, I was going to say, so since I don't know if our speakers can stay after one, I wanted to, Travis, would you be able to stay on a little after and take a couple questions?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, if that's okay, then we can move on, and I can introduce Nick Jones, who's got experience with commercial fishing. Thank you, Travis, for coming and talking to us about the Puget Sound pilots and what they do. And thank you, Nick, for coming to talk to us about the fishing industry.
No problem. Thank you for having me, and good afternoon to everybody. So I have been a commercial fisherman. I've been a deckhand, crewman, run my own boat, and then now I am a fish broker. I generally call myself a fish pimp, but I've transitioned to another phase of the industry. It's been interesting listening to these other career avenues. In the maritime sector, the fishing industry is the opposite of a lot of what has been discussed today. It is not secure, it's not stable, it's not working for the government in any way, shape, or form. There are no benefits. It is a strictly entrepreneurial activity. And for those who are inclined that way, there's tremendous opportunities in the commercial fishing sector. Commercial fishing, of course, used to be a major part of the San Juan Islands economy, and it doesn't appear to be so much anymore from in terms of the locus of the industry, but there's still a tremendous amount of seafood production that happens around the island. Crab, salmon, various dive fisheries, and most of that now has oriented toward the mainland, just based on processing and logistics. Hubs being now in Bellingham, primarily, to a lesser degree, Anacortes and La Conner, and then Seattle and Everett. But like a lot of these industries that are blue collar and highly skilled, there's coming to be a great skill shortage. A lot of people are aging out of the industry, and there's a lot of opportunity at all levels of it. I guess one of the things that I would say that has been most rewarding for me over the years, I've been doing this since I was in my teens, in various formulations, is that there's so much opportunity and so much scope, I guess I would say, that I've been in very different roles throughout the scope of my career, and it continues to evolve. It continues to be rewarding and challenging and satisfying in a way that I think a lot of static jobs don't have. So that's a great thing. There's still quite a few commercial fisher folk who live in the islands. Many of them operate seasonally in the islands and then operate the rest of the time in Alaska or off of the West Coast. In terms of average revenues, income, it's all over the place. Again, this is an industry with no stability. My worst year, I've gone backwards. My best year, I've gone forwards by very large sums that even more so than the pilots. I won't get too specific, but yeah, there have been times when that has been the case as well. As far as how to get into it, it's very much a personal relationship based industry. People just start and then develop skills, develop contacts, and work through it. Any kind of specific, vocational training and anything related to mechanics or hydraulics or marine electrical is hugely useful. But I would say that the biggest marker, the biggest indicator, if anybody listening is considering it, is if you are that entrepreneurial mindset and independent bent. If you don't like being told what to do, if you struggle with a regular steady job, you like variety, interesting, challenging situations, and an ever evolving industry and workplace environment, commercial fishing is a great avenue to pursue. So I think that pretty well sums it up.
Thank you so much, Nick. Sorry, Mickey, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask if there were any questions or. So it sounds like if somebody was interested in working their way into that, it would just be to find somebody local who was in the industry and start asking about it.
Get a job and work along. There's a lot of regulatory licensing requirements, not in order to work in the industry, but in order to access given resources. So as an example, Puget Sound crab, which happens all around the islands. Those guys are coming off of probably the best season on record. I think the average permit earned over $200,000 this year in a pretty short season. You have to purchase a permit. There's a limited number of permits available for that. The state stopped issuing them some decades ago. So it's a finite number of permits. You have to purchase that from somebody who already has one. Those prices are set by the market, and then the seasons are set by the state. I just bring that up as one specific example that takes a lot of insider knowledge to navigate. So the way to start is to meet somebody, meet a skipper, get a job, and start building skills and contacts, and just see where the tide takes you.
Somebody in the chat asked you about certifications you need to be part of the fishing vessel. Are there any?
None, zero. It's the last outlaw industry.
On the flip side, I think the time you spend on the vessel, though, that would count for ship time if you're going on to, like, trying to go become an able seaman and beyond for the larger boats.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of folks I know in the ferries who used to fish. It's a great way to develop those sea skills and build the sea time.
Another question from chat was, I get seasick, so no commercial fishing for me, but do you see more women getting into commercial fishing these days, or is it still considered a more non-traditional career for women and non-binary folks?
There are a lot more women getting into commercial fishing these days. From when I started, women were a novelty. There's still some around, but now it's a much safer, more inclusive workplace, I would say. And I get seasick too, but it only lasts for a day or two. You just have to push through. Don't let that disqualify you.
Well, to keep things on track, unless there are any other questions right now, Nick, would you be able to stick around for any questions after one?
Sure.
Okay, in that case, thank you so much for coming and talking about the fishing industry. And I'd like to introduce Tom Averna, talking about who's had experience with captaining charter boats as well as with marine surveying, which before I started organizing this, I didn't even know existed. So
most people don't actually.
Yeah. So thank you for coming, Tom.
You're welcome. I got my merchant mariner credentials in like 1974, and with the purpose of working on yachts and small craft. And in 1986, I began apprenticing as a marine surveyor in the Seattle area. And then in 1988, I started a whale watch business. So I've used my license to operate boats and my marine surveyor credentials. They kind of went hand in hand, and it worked out pretty well. If somebody's interested in getting into licensed captain work, the opportunities are kind of limited in San Juan County, unless you want to work on a whale watch boat. And you're looking at, I did a little computation, and there's probably about 25 to 30 hired captains that operate for the whale watch companies that are based in San Juan County. There's probably double that when you get down to Seattle, Anacortes, Edmonds, and Victoria. But if you just want to stay in San Juan County, there are opportunities to work as a licensed captain, up to 100 tons. You have to have a merchant mariner's credential for at least 100 tons, 50-ton minimum. I'd say that it's mainly a part-time situation where it's a summer only, spring, summer, and fall. And what some captains do, and what I would recommend is go south in the winter and pick up some work as a hired captain on a charter boat or commercial boat of some kind down there. That's probably basically it. There aren't many charter boats as far as day sail charter boats, stuff like that in San Juan County. So that's probably as far as you're going to get working as a licensed captain, unless you start your own business. And like the fishing industry, like any entrepreneurial situation, you don't know where your next meal is going to come from, but it's an exciting lifestyle to say the least. And as far as marine surveying, a marine surveyor basically is a professional that evaluates the condition and the valuation of a vessel. He's called in by a potential buyer, called in by an insurance company if there's any damage to the vessel, and called in by insurance company for insurance renewal. And he evaluates the condition of the boat, kind of like a house appraiser does when somebody's interested in buying a house. Not the most favored person around. They've got to give a lot of bad news to a prospective buyer or to the owner of the boat, which is even worse. And the opportunities for being a marine surveyor in San Juan County, I've always done it on a part-time basis since I've been here in 1988. It's not a full-time position here in the islands. You definitely would have to move off the island and be on the mainland to be a full-time marine surveying. And you need a lot of skill and kind of a jack of all trades. You have to know every system on the vessel. There is certification. It's kind of a voluntary certification that takes time, and it's not an easy process. But if you can find another survey company that's willing to take you on as an apprentice, that would be the best thing to do. There is a school down in Florida, Chapman School of Seamanship, that offers a marine survey course. I believe it's like a 8-week study program, and you come out as a so-called marine surveyor, but you still need on-the-job training. As far as the yachting industry is concerned, there's a lot of potential for growth as a yacht captain in the marine industry. There are like 4 different types of yachts that you could work as a private captain. First one would be traditional vessels like large schooners and tall ships, so to speak. And there's a lot of room and a lot of captains positions available in that field. Then you got the racing field, yacht racing. To be a professional captain on a racing yacht. It takes a lot of skill, of course, but it's it's a six-figure opportunity as a skipper, and then you can go all the way up to driving a Russian oligarch's yacht. Eventually you'll get up to that position if you like, and then you're looking at what the pilots are making. You're looking at well into the six figures for that. But it's a kind of job where you're not home. You're on the beck and call of an owner, and it gets kind of tired. When I first got my captain's license in '74, I did a lot of yacht deliveries around the world, and that took me away from home for months at a time sometimes. And the pay wasn't really good, but it was a learning experience, and it was a lifestyle. And basically, I think that's where you're going to find more in the yachting field than anything else is more of a lifestyle that you'd be able to support yourself, but I don't think you're going to get rich working as a hired captain somewhere. But like I said, if you get into your own business, then when I got into my whale watching business, I own that since 1988. Just my son took it over now. It worked out pretty well. It worked out to where we were able to live a pretty comfortable lifestyle. Any questions on anything? I think that's basically it. Hopefully I covered everything.
Could you say a couple of words about how you, and maybe you could talk also about some of the other sort of smaller boat captain and piloting career paths, but like how did you become or would somebody become a captain for a yacht or a charter boat, or like the small freight boats that we have out here in the islands?
Yeah, you have to get your a merchant mariner certificate, your captain's license. You have to have a certain amount of time documented on the water. I think for the minimum six-pack license, 6 passengers or under, I think you have to have 365 days documented on the water. It doesn't mean you have to be operating the boat as crew. From what I understand, you can even use your own boat as documentation. And then when you get into the more of the tonnage, taking as an inspected vessel, taking out more than 6 passengers, you've got to have, I think, 720 days, I think it is. And so the first thing you want to do, I would think, is crew on every boat you can. Talk to people if they need crew to go sailing for here and there. Maybe approach some of the commercial boats here, the whale watch companies, and see if they need deckhands. You could work as a naturalist, but you have to have training for that as well, and that would count as time on the water, and you could work your way up that way. Basically, that's it. You just have to get time on the water to be able to do that. I can't hear you.
Sorry, someone in the chat asked, what's that? What does it mean an uninspected vessel, the OUPV?
That just means that it's not U.S. Coast Guard inspected. It's not under the same regulations as an inspected vessel is. It still has to have the same safety recommendations requirements, but you're only permitted to sail with 6 passengers or under. So it's in the trade, it's called a 6-pack license.
So if there aren't any questions specifically for Tom, we can open it up for more questions for Travis or Knych about the large boat piloting or commercial fishing as well.
We had one question earlier for Travis that was, do you do the same onboard nav commands for cruise ships?
It was the same what type of commands for cruise
It
ships?
says onboard nav/commands.
That's a good question. Cruise ships are very unique, and as are some of the private yachts with unique propulsion systems, where your typical tanker or container ship or bulk freighter, it's fairly simple. It has one big wheel and a rudder, and maybe it has a bow thruster. So the commands are very straightforward: port or starboard, helm, engine dead slow ahead, slow astern, things like that. Whereas with cruise ships, they might have 4 azipods and 4 thrusters. I wouldn't claim to be as good as the captain at ship handling his vessel. So the state has an agreement that will con those vessels to within 1/10 of a mile of the berth, and then pass on over to the captain. And then I'll observe him, and if I see anything I don't like, I'll let him know if maybe we're going a little too fast, or let him know that the wind's picking up. But they'll handle the vessel to the dock.
Thanks, Mickey.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
I would
go
like
ahead.
to add something if I can. When you're working as a professional yacht captain, it's not just sailing the boat. You've also got to be the engineer as well. So you need to have complete knowledge of all the systems on that particular vessel that you're operating.
Yeah, I would echo that from Tom. And whether it's a fishing boat or a tugboat, the captain should also be as qualified as the engineer and know every system as good as the engineer. So he knows his boat, and he knows when maybe he's not being fed correct information.
There's another question on the chat. Says, I help people find jobs. If I have people who are formally justice involved, criminal record, are these jobs not really an option, or are there possibilities for any of these careers? Licensing might be a problem. And I can speak a little bit to that about the merchant mariner credential, that it's depends on what the time, the length of time from the conviction and the specific type of conviction. So I think some like treason and murder and things like that are like disqualifying, but then a lot of other ones, like they have a review period where you could still get the credential, but they may have extra review beforehand. Travis can certainly chime in and correct me about that if I'm mistaken. So
yeah, I wouldn't want someone to be discouraged from applying or even at finding out if they're eligible. All you can do is ask, do some research on the Coast Guard's website and apply. I have a criminal record, and look at me now. So yeah, don't let it stop you.
I've heard that
they're not always the most civilized people.
I've heard that if you have a DUI, it makes it very difficult to renew your license. So
and also difficult to cross borders to get to a vessel that's crossing a border. That can present a challenge.
Right. If you're operating.
Go ahead, Nick.
I was going to say that in the commercial fishery, the joke is that a criminal record is a requirement for getting a job. It is certainly not a detriment. And one of the wonderful things about the commercial fishing industry is that now and historically, it has been a great way for all kinds of people to make their way up the economic ladder. Immigrants are really highly represented in the commercial fishery and have been all along. Folks with criminal records, checkered backgrounds, etc. We embrace everybody. So it's all about what you can do, not about what your past was.
Yeah.
The same person mentioned former addiction was one of the things that some of the people they worked with had questions about. But I can also put in the chat while you're taking other questions. I see Minnie's got a hand up, and somebody else asked about people bringing people sailing for pay, what a minimum boat size was. So I'll let you answer those. And well, I look for a link to the MM's Merchant Mariner Credential page from the Coast Guard, which may answer some of those questions about, or give people a way to sort of find out more information about their specific case.
Let's start with Manny Kinch. We just saw your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to add that it all depends on the severity of the justice involvement and how long ago it was. And if one job is not available because of that, there are other jobs in the marine industry that you can qualify for. And one of the things we do is assist people in overcoming that barrier and finding employment. So it can be done, and it's done on an individual basis.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Manny. And then for the, I guess, six-pack license question, maybe Tom, is that something that you could answer? Like, what's the minimum
Sure.
boat size for taking
well,
people
there
out on a cruise, paid cruise?
Operating a six-pack license, there really isn't a size limitation, but there are like, you cannot operate a foreign-built vessel for charter in the U.S. unless there's Jones Act example, which was a law put on the books back in the 40s to prevent foreign vessels from entering in coastal commerce. But so getting insurance is another thing, and you just can't get on a boat and take people out for hire unless you have proper licensing, insurance. The vessel also, if it's federally documented, has to be documented coastwise and not as recreational. So people try it all the time, but if they get caught, there's ramifications. They could take the boat away.
Right.
Well, if there are no other questions, thank you all so much for coming and for all the questions. And thank you so much to the presenters, Seth and Renee, Travis and Tom and Knych. Really appreciate your coming in here and sharing your experience.
Thank you so much, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you for letting us.